Hey everybody, this is Blake here, and welcome to my review of Paranormal Activity, The Marked Ones. Paranormal Activity 4 was universally disliked by the masses. Whether you were a fan of the previous films or a detractor of the previous films, everybody pretty much agreed that it was the weakest of the franchise, and fortunately that reflected its box office intake. Even though it made a good profit, it's really hard not to when the budget is this small. It was a big step down from the previous films in terms of their financial success. So the studios, they wisely realized that they needed to win back the crowd so they can make the big bucks again, and pushed Paranormal Activity 5 back another year. I thought that was a really smart decision. Unfortunately, they got a little greedy and decided they want some of that dough now, so produced a spin-off, The Marked Ones. And the logic is, if it fails, they could just justify it as, a spin-off. It's not supposed to be as good or as successful as any of the official Paranormal Activity movies. And if it's a success, not only do they get another profit, they also get people hyped up for Paranormal Activity 5. So I was a little mixed on that. Of course, I only realized that there were two different movies a couple weeks ago. I actually thought The Marked Ones was Paranormal Activity 5. So I was a little embarrassed when I was corrected on Twitter that these are in fact two different movies, which I guess I'm glad, because I don't like it when sequels drop the numbers. It just makes things confusing. But when I saw the trailer for The Marked Ones, it didn't really impress me too much. It looked like it could be okay, but it didn't seem any better than any of the previous films. And whether I liked Paranormal Activity 3 or 4 or not, I did think they had good trailers. This one just didn't have the same impact on me. And but then I started getting a little excited when the reviews came in, and it seemed like people were at least more positive about this than they were about Paranormal Activity 4. So I could at least expect a step up from that movie, and I did not like Paranormal Activity 4 at all. But even then, I was figuring, even if it is better than Paranormal Activity 4, is it just going to be the same shit that we've seen before? I really liked Paranormal Activity, and I liked Paranormal Activity 2, but even by that point, I was feeling that maybe this formula was going to get old really quickly, and they continued just beating us over the head with it in Paranormal Activity 3, which once again, still okay. The filmmakers at this point still had good ideas as to how to scare its audience. But it's like the formula is just the same thing. So we're seeing the same kind of movie over and over again, and just like Saw, that really eventually starts to diminish the suspense because we know how it's going to end, because the previous films ended like this, and this one's not doing anything different. Then of course Paranormal Activity 4 continued that trend, and finally people got pissed off. And it wasn't that I thought Paranormal Activity 4 was a really bad movie. It was just, once again, the same shit we had seen before, except the scares were fewer and far less effective. So was The Marked Ones going to follow that same path? Well, now that I've seen it, it's kind of difficult to describe, because I believe The Marked Ones is probably going to be one of the most divisive movies within this franchise. I saw it with my dad, and he disliked it. But I actually kind of liked it. So I'll try to explain both sides, and you could figure out yourself whether you think you'll like it or not. So let's go ahead and begin with the characters. I liked them. They're pretty obnoxious. They do some things that are just flat out annoying or unlikable, and they still can't justify using this camera as much as they do. A few scenes, okay, they're in the dark and the camera could work as a light, but other times they're just in their room hanging out, and it's like nobody films that much. I'm going to laugh if it turns out that the only way Toby can actually do anything is if people film it for prolonged periods of times, and that's how he chooses his victims, is based on how long they're going to use this freaking camera. That actually probably would be the best justification for all these films, but that is still a weak point. But at the same time, even when these characters are being kind of annoying, they were always entertaining. I will admit that I thought these guys were hilarious the majority of the time, and I thought the acting was pretty good too. The main guy looks a lot like Taylor Lautner mixed in with Jay Hernandez. And he's not a great actor, but I thought he was a good actor. He did carry the movie pretty well. So that's obviously one thing going for it, because none of the previous main characters really did anything for me. They were just normal people, and that tended to Sometimes they were boring, other times they were unlikable. These guys, at least, they could keep my interest even when they were being obnoxious. So that's, I guess, one thing going for this. In terms of the story, though, it's the same shit with... It's at least the plot is advancing. We're learning a few new things about what's going on. So baby steps, I guess. It advanced more than Paranormal Activity 4 did, anyway. But some of the things they introduced, some of the new ideas, they're interesting, but they're also kind of confusing because they don't really explain them well enough. And at times I felt like, because they bring back the girl from Paranormal Activity 2 who survived, and she's like now the expert, and I'm thinking, how does she know a lot of this stuff? Maybe that will be explained in Paranormal Activity 5. But then other things, like, I don't really want to spoil anything, but they bring up a point early on as to some of the motives of these villains, and it kind of comes back at the end, but the way it comes back, I was more confused than anything. And to me, the story for Paranormal Activity, the marked ones, left more questions than answers. But still, they're doing a little bit more, so I have faith that Paranormal Activity will be going in the right direction, even if this movie didn't quite do that. Pacing, it's in a lot of ways just as slow-paced as the previous films, but as I said, because I thought the main characters were entertaining, I was never bored. And the scares, I guess this is obviously the most important part of the movie. This is where the movies, I think, is going to divide people the most, although the characters will themselves be pretty divisive too. It's not quite the same that we've gotten before. Previously, it was always about a door slowly moving or something like that, something that could have a very natural explanation, but because we know this is a Paranormal Activity movie, there's something sinister behind it, and that helps build suspense and helps build atmosphere. That's what it really comes down to, whether you're going to like the movie or not. Some people see a door move and it's going to be creepy because you know what's behind it, whereas other people see it and they'll just be like, a door move, big deal. And the first 4 films more or less followed that same formula. Well, this one, it's less about the hauntings and more about the possession. And in theory, I would not like this because usually possession movies, since the Matrix, what the hell? Since The Exorcism, it's like you can't watch any possession film without thinking of The Exorcist. And one thing that I do give credit to these modern day ghost films, they usually have a possession subplot, is those aren't the focus. It's always what's going on around them that usually is intended to get under the viewer's skin. Well, here it's just really straight up the guy being possessed. At first he's kind of amused at how all these things are happening around him because it's working to his benefit. He gets mugged and beat up, and Toby actually defends him and throws the guys around, and he starts figuring out he could do almost superhuman things because of this. But then as time goes along, a more sinister presence is brought into play, to where now he's losing time and stuff like that, and that's where a lot of the suspense comes from. But there are also some really good jolts too. I don't want you to think that that's all there is. The scares have substance because there isn't as many, I don't know, false scares. Well, it depends how you describe it. To me, a false scare is something like where you think it's going to be leading to something scary and then it doesn't. There are boo scares in this movie, and even when you know they're coming, for some reason they made me jump, and that really frustrates me. There's this one part early on where they're investigating this dark and scary area, and it's too early for something really heavy to happen, so I'm just waiting for his friend to jump out and startle the cameraman. And it happened, and for some reason, even though I knew it was coming, it still got me. There are scares like those, but for the most part, when something makes you jump, it's because something serious is happening. Like, for example, there's this subplot where this woman who's obviously into some shady stuff, she dies, and her killer is on the loose, and we know that he is possessed. Well, every once in a while, he will show up, and, because it's an actual person, and this person is a threat, that makes those scenes pretty scary when he suddenly appears. And when Toby does anything, makes his own appearance, it's not just something as subtle as a door moving. It's somebody's going to get thrown somewhere or something like that. So I liked that. That was at least the closest thing to a change of pace we've gotten in these movies. What else can I say there? There's a really intense finale too. I was really concerned because I thought it was going to end like really abruptly and it would have just a very unsatisfying conclusion, but I'm pretty sure they were making fun of the devil inside, where there's this car accident and things stop long enough for you to presume that that's going to be it. But then it keeps going, and then it has this other fake ending where you think it's going to stop there, and that's not too much better than the first one, but then it keeps going again, and then the final scare actually did really get me, even though, once again, what directly preceded that was really kind of confusing, although it was an interesting bit of insight for fans of the previous films, because it shows an event that occurred off-screen in the first movie, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But once again, the way it goes down, it was just a little confusing, and the characters suddenly become stupid for no reason. And there are also little tidbits about the finale that hasn't been done before, and even though it led to some unintentionally funny moments, like, for example, crazy chick versus gun. That's all I'll say there. At least I felt the filmmakers were trying to do something different, so I liked that. There are actually a few unintentionally funny parts in general, like the whole Simon Says thing was really stupid. That's how they contact Toby, believe it or not. That was pretty lame, but otherwise, usually the scares got me. I thought the finale was very riveting. Now, I can't say this is a great film or even a good film. I do think that it's inferior to both the first two movies. Once again, the plot is just kind of clumsily handled. I thought Paranormal Activity 3 had more high points, but also more low points. This film felt more consistent with the scares, but nothing's going to really keep me up at night. It's not going to leave the same impression that the first two films, and even to a lesser extent the third film had. But still, it is a step in the right direction. It was much better than Paranormal Activity 4, and even though it is flawed, I really liked it. But you have to just consider everything that's being said, the change of scare tactics, whether you think the characters are going to annoy you or not. You might really dislike this movie, so please keep that in mind. If you would like to read my written review, a link shall be provided in the description. I have not even written it yet, so I gotta get on that soon. I also did written reviews for 47 Ronin, if you want to read that. And I also did a vlog on that too. Saw 3, and I also released my top 10 favorite films of 2013 in written form. I don't know if I'm going to do a video on that or not, so check those out. And I do plan on doing something involving my least favorite films of 2013. I have not decided whether I'm going to film that, script it. I probably will. If I do film it, it probably will be scripted, or if I just want to do a written list. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked the first 3 Paranormal Activity films but thought you were going to give up after the 4th one, I think you should give this one a shot. If you gave up after the second one, maybe when it comes out on DVD. And if you'd never liked any of these films, maybe if you could see it for free, because it does enough different to where you might actually prefer it more than the first film, but at the same time, it's, once again, it's kind of slowly paced. I don't know if it's different enough to really win you over. It's something you'd have to make your own decision on there. So I'll see you guys later.